Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Audit and Finance Standing Committee meeting for, I think it's Wednesday, July 19th, 2023. It is currently 10:09 in the morning, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. My name is Paul Russell, and I represent Lower Sackville. I'd also like to acknowledge that the Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaty signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. As we are having a virtual meeting, one of the standard practices is to go around the room and just make sure that everybody's audio and video are working well. So let's start with Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, colleagues and staff. Happy to be here this morning.
Absolutely, thank you. And good morning, Councillor Hensby.
Good morning, all. I hope you're enjoying this nice, wet, soggy day.
Thank you. Good morning, Councillor Cleary. Welcome back.
Good morning from District 9.
Good morning. And Councillor Stoddard, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thank you. And Councillor Lovelace, good morning.
Good morning, coming to you live from downtown Hamilton.
Good stuff. Thank you. And I don't see the mayor in the meeting yet. Hopefully he will be able to join us. Jerry Blackwood, good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. Good morning, members of Audit and Finance.
And John Traves, our legal eye. Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of June 21st, 2023. Can I please have a motion to approve those minutes? Councillor Stoddard, thank you. A seconder?
Second.
Councillor Cleary, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Not seeing any. All in favor of the minutes of June 21st, 2023, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Great, that passes. The next item is the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. Over to the clerk, are there any changes?
Thank you, Chair. There are no requests for additions or deletions to today's agenda.
Okay, thank you. So can I please have a motion to approve the order of business? Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, seconded by Councillor Cleary. Are there any changes from committee? Not seeing any. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great, we have an order of business. Business arising out of the minutes. Not seeing anything. Call for declaration of conflict of interest. Not seeing anything. Motions of reconsideration and rescission is none. Consideration of the deferred business is none. Notices of tabled matters is none. Correspondence. Over to the clerk. Do we have any correspondence for this meeting?
Thank you, Chair. There's been no correspondence received for this meeting.
Okay, and have we received any petitions?
Thank you, Chair. There have been no petitions received for this meeting.
Okay, thank you. And there are no presentations, no information items being brought forward, no Auditor General report, although there will be one in August, or there is one expected in August anyway. And so the next item on the agenda is 12.2.1, budget increase CD 000001 for Spring Garden streetscaping. There is no presentation associated with this item, although we do have staff on hand who are able to speak to any questions that the committee members might have. Please remember that if you would like to speak, please indicate that in the chat and we will go through it that way. So can I please have a motion for this? Go ahead, Councillor Cleary.
Happy to put on the floor that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend that Regional Council 1 approve a transfer of $150,000 from project account number CD 000002 Argyle and Grafton to CD 000001 Spring Garden Road. 2, approve a transfer of $750,000 from project account number CT 1900003 Downtown Dartmouth Infrastructure Renewal to CD 000001 Spring Garden Road. 3, approve a budget increase of $900,000 to project account CD 000001 Spring Garden Streetscape. And 4, approve an increase of $908,386 net HST included to PO number 2070858423 for Brycon Construction Limited for changes in contracted scope of work as outlined in the financial implications section of the staff report.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Do we have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Lovelace. Do you have anything on that, Councillor Cleary?
Just looking at the work that's done and to be done and the staff report, it is unfortunately a little bit higher. A number of change orders had to go in. Some work still needs to be done in the planters and other things that are there. It's still within, as I recall, 10% kind of that upper limit of expansion of a project, change orders, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it is an extremely important project. And of course, if you look at the totality of it, I think it was over $10 million originally. So, we're still kind of, experiencing some changes in inflation, but not outrageously so.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Hunsby, go ahead.
Just a quick question for staff regards to the sizable contingency that's still left there on the budget books. How long will that contingency remain there? In regards to, do we have to wait 1 year after a warranty period to make sure there's no other shortcomings of the work being done? I would assume there'd be warranty and guarantees from the work being done by the contractor. So I would hope contingency will not be needed. But how long does that contingency sit there until it's either redirected to another project or accumulated for a surplus account for future uses?
Thank you, Councillor. It's Hanita Koblenz, Transportation Planning, Streetscaping. Through you, Councillor, to the chair, through the chair to the Councillor. I think that's a great question. My director might have something additional to add. I don't think there's anything automatic that will strike the contingency and send it back to the capital pool, but it is prudent to keep it after a big project for I would say approximately no more than 2 years, just to make sure nothing extra shows up that we missed or need to address that can't be covered. Deficiencies, warranty issues would be covered by the contract. You wouldn't need the contingency to address them. But if there are other things that come up, big projects like this, they don't just wrap up instantly. So it is prudent to keep the contingency for a short period.
Okay. Thank you, Hanita. Councillor Hunsby, does that address your concerns?
I see Mr. Duncan has a comment to make.
Peter, do you have anything to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, I was going to say essentially the same thing. I mean, all things being equal, we should be in a position to make a decision on returning money into the account in fall of 24 for the 25 budget season.
Okay. Super.
And, also, Mr. Chair, my video is not working, so if I have to speak again, maybe if we could just move it on.
Okay, thank you. And Jerry, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just with respect to that question and the benefit of the committee, typically the process for once a project is completed is once it gets past the warranty periods and things like that, then the project should be closed out and any remaining funding would go to our cap pool, which would then be reallocated to next year's capital projects. That said, those are few and far between now that we actually have monies left over to allocate, but that is the process.
Okay, super. Thank you very much. Once again, David, does that cover your concerns? It does. Thank you. Councillor Lovelace, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick question for staff. Regarding the downtown Dartmouth infrastructure renewal account. So I know that we've taken funds out of this account for other projects. And again, we're moving funds from this. And Jerry, just to your point previously about, money not being left in accounts to sort of reallocate them back to the accounts they came from. So I'm just trying to get an understanding of, the plan to the plan to transfer those funds back to Dartmouth, the downtown Dartmouth infrastructure renewal. Am I reading this correctly, that the plan is to next budget and then potentially the budget year after? Just wondering if you can speak to that, please. Like, it just seems we're borrowing from one fund to assist in another project. And at the same time, I want to make sure that, if we've allocated that money to downtown Dartmouth infrastructure renewal fund, that will be replenished at some point. Thank you.
Yes, so with any of these reallocations within our current capital budget, they certainly will require a reassessment when we bring forward the next capital plan and a plan to allocate funds, right? So, there could be, like, some of these projects haven't even started or they're in a planning or design phase. But they, for the benefit of the committee, it could create a pressure down the road, depending on the cost. And what we've been seeing in this inflationary environment is that, costs are escalated. So it can create pressures down the road. However, it doesn't create a pressure within our current capital budget year.
Okay, not in the current capital budget year, but potentially in future budget years as costs begin to escalate. So I think just moving forward, Jerry, it's important, I think, to highlight that within that capital budget plan for the next year, next future years, to ensure that, councilors are aware of the amount of funds that are being transferred from other projects. Because obviously at some point, we can't just keep taking from other projects to meet the needs of projects that are, underfunded, I guess you could say. So I appreciate that response, and I will continue to look at this and fingers crossed that capital costs stabilize at some point.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Lovelace. Go ahead, Councillor Cleary.
Just to follow up on Councillor Lovelace. So I think in the report, maybe on page 3 or 4, it talks about the Dartmouth project specifically. And I think next year we need to put in a couple million, and the year after that, I think it's maybe 4 million. So this is only 750. Obviously, the staff report indicates that essentially in one of those years, instead of 2 million and 4 million, it'll have to be like 2,750,000 and 4 million. That's the way I kind of read it. Am I sort of thinking in the right way?
Perhaps I'll chime in if Peter, you've got something to add, please top up. But I think that's accurate to the chair. Through the project, the Dartmouth Cove project, is at 30% design. It's only expected to use about 1.2 million of the 6 million plus currently in the account this year. As the detailed design wraps up within the next year, we'll have a more accurate cost estimate, and I think those amounts in future capital budgets, they may be 2 million, they may be 2.75 million, but that budget projection is based on a concept plan. So the budget will get better, and the cost estimate will get better, and the budget ask will also be more refined.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Thank you, Councillor Cleary. I don't see any further speakers on the list. Are we ready for the question?
Question.
Question's been called. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Perfect. That motion passes. Thank you very much, everyone. The next item is 12.2.2 Administrative Order 10 Partial Tax Exemption. Go ahead, Councillor Hensby.
Thank you very much. The motion is that the Audit and Finance Standing Committee, one, discharge the property taxes owned by applicant one as defined below for amount of $42,732.79. And two, discharge the property taxes owed by applicant two as defined below for an total amount of $2,825.49. And three, discharge the property taxes owed by applicant three as defined below for the total amount of $11,970.85.
Second,
Thank you, Councillor Bagel-Gunn. Go ahead, Councillor Hensby.
I'm glad to see that we're trying to assist with a lot of these land title clarification files that are long been backed up and stuff, and these are some of the outstanding issues that need to be addressed. My only concern, though, is that I thought there should be an in-camera confidential report providing information of whose property these are, because in the past, when we write off taxes, we've always had an information, confidential information report talking of who's the account, the address, the PID number, whatever the case may be. So just curious why we don't have a private confidential report associated with this particular report.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. I'm going to ask Renee to speak to that. It is effectively the same conversation that we had just a little bit earlier.
Thanks very much. I think John would actually like to go. He has his hand up. I'll let him go first.
I did not see John's hand. Okay, sorry. Thank you. Go ahead, John. And you're muted. Welcome to Teams.
Yeah, well, somebody muted me. Mutter. So look, there's a couple of reasons. I think, the question becomes in some ways the purpose for which the personal information is obtained. I think you need to recall or keep in mind that, the issue of the owners is only just recently been settled. And so it does sort of beg the question as to whether and for what purpose it would be needed. There is a thought that there's the potential for bias in terms of sharing that. This is the tail end of a process council has been pleased to support since 2016 in terms of providing a write-off. The charge is really with respect to taxes that were not addressed to any particular individual because we didn't know the title of the land. And so it becomes a bit of potential victimization by attaching a name to the particular bill, although that is now the case because of the land titles clarification. And so there are some challenges with it, and I think that staff's landed on the best approach in respect to this, and it sort of ties things up in terms of the freedom of information and the protection of privacy of these individuals.
Councillor Hensby, does that address your concern?
Not really. I thought we should be consistent in our practices. When we write off taxes, we knew the PID, the assessment account number that's associated with it. Owners' names might be something that's just been recently ratified, but still we knew which property was going to be forgiven. And I think we should maintain that particular practice.
Okay, thank you for that. John or Renee, is there anything that you can add to that?
No, I think we're at where we are, unless council wants to direct us differently. There are challenges with respect, as I said, to the purposes for which the information has been provided. And I'm mindful as well of the findings of the UN Working Group of Experts on People of African Descent and the urging that they did around, the process and moving this forward in a way which does not victimize or otherwise stigmatize people who had an outstanding bill. And so I think in this particular case, those interests sort of weigh more in favor of the privacy of the individuals. And so there it is, I guess.
Thank you, John. Go ahead, Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you. Thanks for this report. And I just wanted to say, just agree with Councillor Hensby. I think it's important, and I agree with staff. I think it's important for us to maintain the privacy of these individuals. They have gone through an awful lot to access their title to their property. So my questions are, I don't know if staff can answer these, but I'm trying to get an understanding of the scope and the number of properties that we're dealing with in the future. So So I know that we have 3 in front of us today, but how many more are we going to see? And do we anticipate that other communities, including Upper Hammonds Plains and Lucasville, 2 historic Black communities in the Hammonds Plains, District 13, District 14, they are wondering when they will have access to this program. So those are my 2 questions for staff. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Renee Towns, Director of Revenue and Treasurer, through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee. Thanks very much for your questions. So as far as scope, we do not have a great idea of the scope now. We do work closely with the provincial land title folks who are helping customers navigate this process. So the scope, I know of about 10 properties that we're sort of working through, but we're not guaranteed that they are going to actually obtain title. As well, they might only be claiming a portion of the PID. So if they have a portion of the PID, then a new AAN is created, which means there's no back tax. So there's no impact for that. So from the scope perspective, we'll continue to work with them. I will say that any arrears that are on HRM's books that are in these areas are fully accounted for. So from the perspective of there's not a financial concern that way, we do have certain formulas that where we allow for taxes, and the formula for what we allow for in this area is a little higher, just knowing that this is possible. So there's not a financial concern from that perspective. And with respect to your second question, the boundaries are determined by the province. So I understand that any request to expand the boundary would have to come from the province. And then what would happen is I would bring a report to council for your consideration to expand the boundary. So that should be with the province. That would be initiated there, and then you guys would find out about it because they would approach us and seek council approval to expand that boundary.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll direct constituents then to contact the province. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Renee. Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for a little bit of context on this program, just for the new councillors, it took a lot of heavy lifting by staff to get this program to where it is right now, and it was a joint effort by HRM staff and the Barrister Society of Nova Scotia, and and then excuse me, Premier McNeil made it a priority, and the program got appropriately funded. So these 3 is optimistic, but we certainly hope that there would be a bigger uptake in the program, but it is a pretty daunting process to go through. We're optimistic that every time we get a successful application, it will create some momentum in the community for other people to come forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Go ahead, Councillor Cleary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to add my support to actually what Mr. Traves was saying. Given kind of where this all germinated from, and the reason that the province is doing this and we're helping, is that the land title was unclear. I mean, that's the whole point of the clarification, is to make it more clear. So to identify any properties when the title wasn't clear would be unfair to who eventually ended up, because we don't know if it's one person or several families. And I think that's appropriate that we don't know that. But once the clarification happens, then it's in our system, and then they're taxed like any other property owner. And I think that's on the go forward, when we would get that information. If someone comes forward and says, hey, I can't pay my property taxes anymore, we're in arrears, and staff bring forward a report to forgive those or to waive those. But where we are now, where it's unclear, how would you attach a name to that? I mean, for how many years or decades has this been unclear? And why would you put it, even in a confidential report, here's the property or here's the owner, when we're not sure who the owner is? But once it's made clear, then we know. So anyway, I agree with Mr. Traves in that assessment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Go ahead, Renee.
Thanks very much. Through you, Mr. Chair, to the committee. Thank you very much for that, Councillor Cleary. I will just add, you would not see a request from staff to forgive arrears, because once title is clear, and we do everything we can to work with customers. We will help them with payment plans. We make them aware of any grants or relief that they would be entitled for via our low income exemption program. If somebody is unable to pay their taxes and the title is clear, unfortunately, at that point, the property would proceed to tax sale. So we would not be writing off even and then. So, you know, we don't write off taxes if there is clear title, that those properties go through the tax sale stream.
Thank you for that clarification, Renee. Thank you, Councillor Cleary. Go ahead, Councillor Hensby.
Thank you very much. Back in my time, 20 years ago, when I was the MLA, I knew there was almost 200 files that were in the Department of Natural Resources regarding land title clarification. Since the province recently did their $2 million set-aside fund to help with the legal and survey matters, I'm not sure if that number has gone up significantly or not. Perhaps the province can provide us a quantity of files that are being discussed. But my concern though is that you know, the historical problems of having unclear title or inappropriate documentation and the lack of wills or bequests that were there. There's also multiple families making multiple requests on the same piece of land, so there's a lot of family matters that need to be straightened out as well. So I don't know how the adjudicators they appointed have been trying to resolve those matters, but if there's any outstanding taxes with those properties that are associated with lack of clear title, are we going to be forgiving them all, or is any of it going to be assigned to the property owner? I'd like to know what that process is.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. Thanks very much for that, Councillor Hensby. So if we can establish that somebody has the benefit of ownership, their name is on, you know, they're living at the property, we at that point, we work with the community navigator and we work with that customer and we set them up in a payment arrangement if they can't pay fully, or we encourage them to pay. That is one of the ways that they can help strengthen their claim to go before the adjudicator to show that they should have the title and they should be awarded the title. So in general, what happens, a customer would begin the process. They would be assigned a lawyer from that is funded by the province. That lawyer would help them navigate through the system and the paperwork. Part of what that claim entails is that they are publicized. It's publicized in the newspaper that they are making a claim on a property, and others who might contest that claim have a certain amount of time in which to do so. So the ones that we're seeing here are the ones where the claim has been approved by and they've actually received it. So you know, again, we will not be forgiving taxes if we can prove that somebody sort of had the ownership of the property, they're living in the property. The ones that are going to be brought to council are where we had an owner unknown. The person did not realize that there were taxes owing on the account, and they didn't have the benefit of the ownership even if they are on the property at all. So I think with, you know, there are I think 200 is fewer. I'm aware of about 300 files. However, that again could be different because there might be one PID but 3 claims, and maybe they carve out three properties. So that's why it's a bit difficult to nail down one number there. Yeah.
Thank you, Renee. Go ahead, John.
I would just add, so there's well-established processes for dealing with the quieting of titles, generally speaking, where there's family disputes, estates, and others. This program only exists with respect to the land titles clarification program put together by the province. It would not cover other properties where families are uncertain or are trying to sort things out. And so as that program goes through, you know, the commitment by council when in 2016, when council undertook this, was essentially a fresh start for those who had no title and where this program was really going to help sort that out. All others, there's other processes that they should be following. And so that's kind of the difference. So it should not expand beyond the 200 to 300 homes which have already been identified, because that title would not go away at this point. That once it's resolved, that fresh start begins. We should be fine going forward from there. And as time goes by, we'll see fewer and fewer of these, hopefully, and that will resolve it for people.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, John. Thank you, Councillor Hensby. I don't see any further speakers on the list. Are we ready for the question on this?
Question?
Okay, thank you. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great, that motion passes. The next motion is the next item is 12.2.3 Business Services, P&D, PPL, NC Team Augmentation. Once again, there is no presentation related to this, but we do have staff on hand who are able to speak to the report. So can I please have someone put the motion on the floor? Anyone? Go ahead, Councillor Hansby.
That the Audit and Finance Standing Committee recommend the Halifax Regional Council one, approve the transfer of $559,234 net HST included from project account number CI 990013 permitting, licensing, and compliance to project account number CI 230005 permitting, licensing, and compliance for the phase 2, and to award the alternative procurement contract to Bell Inc. for provision of consulting services related to the permitting, planning, licensing, and compliance, the PPL&C program in the amount of $559,234 net HST included, using funding from project account number CI 230005 permitting, licensing, and compliance phase 2, as outlined in the financial implications section of this report.
Thank you, Councillor Hansby. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. Go ahead, Councillor Hansby. Do you have any questions?
Yes, I'm glad to see we're trying to move forward and getting our online permitting processes in place. Hopefully this will quicken the waiting period for permit applications to be processed. But just yesterday, I got an email and a phone call from a constituent complaining that they're being forced to go online to use this permitting process. This person has internet issues, computer literacy issues, stuff like that. These persons should still be able to go in person to file for a building permit. Why are we not accommodating those who do not have the capacity to do it online?
I can take that through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor and to the committee. It's Margie Pike with Planning and Development, and I'm the manager of business services, and the project is under my umbrella of scope of work. I'm really sorry to hear that, Councillor Hansby. Actually, we shouldn't be forcing customers, and so I would be happy to deal with that offline if you want to send me that person's information and I can contact them. We absolutely still have service available for those folks who are not computer illiterate, who don't want to deal with us online. It does make the process more efficient for customers if they deal with the online system, but if they choose to not want to use the online system, we absolutely can still service them at our counter and through email. And so happy to deal with that customer and get their application in for them outside of the system. So just shoot me their information. I'll do that for you.
Thank you very much.
I've lost the bubble on where they can do that. Where they can go up to the counter.
Alderney Landing.
Sure. So right now we have 2 customer service locations. We have Alderney and we also have our Bears Road location. And we also have a planning and development office front counter at Duke, which is where we amalgamated all of our planning and development staff. For permit application, they would want to, if they can, come in person to Duke. That would be the best case scenario because there we have actual P&D staff on hand who can help them through the process and navigate the application. If that is not an option for them, then what we can do, they can mail it into us as well if they can't come in person, and we can, provide service over the phone and over email, whatever that they would prefer. I'm assuming that maybe email won't work if they're not very computer illiterate or don't have really good access, so phone call would be best. But they would need to do some kind of application, which we could generate for them on our side through staff. Most likely through phone calls if they cannot do it in person. I hope that answers the question.
It does.
Just let you know the constituent will be in the Sheet Harbor area, so it's a 2-hour trip to come in, do all this work, and 2-hour trip back. So we got to be cognizant of our geography and the ability to serve our constituents from Ecosecum to Hubbard's. So.
Yep, absolutely, Councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hensby. Thank you, Margie. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would just like to echo Councillor Hensby's comments that I've had quite a few residents who are in an area where there's an internet desert, and the online service has been an issue, even to the point some persons that they start the application online and then they get kicked off for one reason or another. And so having the patience with this process is a little bit difficult. I'm really glad to see, you know, more resources put in place by adding, I believe it said 2 business analysts for a term, which makes good sense. One of the things I'm wondering about, Margie, is how do we communicate better resolving some of the issues, like you can come to these 2 locations. That Duke is better. The other thing that I have learned from residents is that sometimes they've done the online application, one little piece is missing, but they're not made aware of that until they call to say, where is my application? What's happened? So they could actually lose anywhere up to a month of time because nobody came back from this online service to say, you're missing this item. So I do believe that we have a little bit of work to do to make sure that we have some good communication out to people about the system, what the capacity is and what it's not, and then what the alternatives are. So if we could look at that in the future, I think it would be helpful. Thank you very much.
Through you, Chair, to the councillor and the committee. Agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, councillor, and absolutely. I mean, we have done great work on our website. Again, though, if people are having access issues from a web base, the website is not necessarily the best place that they can get this information. So I think you've made some good suggestions there, and as well as Councillor Hensby, that are getting me to think about maybe some options where we could have some information at the locations of service that are closer in your areas, even if it is paper-based, if that's something that would be helpful to constituents in that area. So that's something I can take away from today's meeting, absolutely, and look at different ways that we can maybe engage those folks. And the second part, we are absolutely looking at working with customers. So if they are having difficulty, if they do have access, but they are having difficulty, I think it would be the exception that they'd be hearing back in a month right now with our turnaround times. But if that is, again, you know, you can always escalate if someone is having kind of an exceptional experience and not exceptional in the good way, but having a bad experience, and we can absolutely help that customer along. But generally right now, if someone is making application, our staff are normally getting back to them within 2 to 3 days if they're missing something or there's a piece of information that's necessary to move the application along into review. So I would say any of those exemptions, or exceptional experiences on the bad side of things, please escalate to us at Business Services, and we will absolutely help that customer along. And I would hope that those are the exception. Now we've seen a lot less of that than when we first rolled out, and there was a lot of that change happening and people were getting used to the system. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate that response, Margie. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. So I was looking at the report. I don't see any further speakers on the list. I was looking at the report, and this is 2 individuals for a total cost of $560,000, so $280,000 apiece. I wasn't able to determine the scope of work that they would be doing, or why these individuals are getting $280,000 apiece. Wondering if somebody could address both of those.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can chime in there, and Peter, if you'd like to chime in at all, please do so. So the scope of work that we're going to be focusing these individuals on is in the report. It's just the last paragraph just before the discussion piece, and there's kind of 5 bullets there that talk about where we're going to be focusing their attention on. It really is looking at I like to look at it as scope enrichment. It's not necessarily new scope of work that we've already been doing for the last 5 years on the PPLC project and the system and the business improvements. But what we're doing is taking what we have done and enriching some of that. There is a few changes. One of those big things is trusted partner program. We really need to do a lot of analysis with that. And we are working with our partners at the province and with Deloitte, who are working with the executive panel on housing. The other pieces are looking at possibly simplifying some of our permits. So if you look at a building permit, maybe we need a renovation permit, very specific. It's a lot less documentation for someone. It's a lot less questions that we need to ask them. So right now, when you think about someone making an application for a renovation, they're going through a lot of the same processes as if it was a new build. And those kind of things could be split out to make it much more efficient, whether it's an addition, a renovation. A deck should take less questioning, let's say, than a new build of a home, for instance. So that's the type of work that we're focusing these BAs on. The reason that we're going out to contract for them is they are already involved, and I would almost consider them as part of my staff on business services. Their knowledge is why we need to go out and keep them as part of our group, Councillor Russell, right now, until I can build up the team to share back that knowledge with staff. And that will be a separate resource ask in the future and budget to ensure that we have enough administrators and professional services behind the scenes working with business process transformation and system administration.
Okay, so this is a one-year term. If I understand things correctly, again, $280,000 a piece. I would hope that we would be able to internalize a bunch of that.
Absolutely, and that's going to, I would hope that this will build the case that we need these positions in business services moving forward.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Again, I don't see any further speakers in the chat. Are we ready for the question?
Question.
Yeah. Question's been called. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Great, that motion passes. Thank you very much. Next is Grants Committee, and there's nothing there. Members of Standing Committee, there's nothing. Motions, there is nothing. There is no in-camera session. There are no added items. Notices of motion. I don't see any notices of motion. The next item on the agenda is public participation, and as of 4:30 p.m. on Tuesday, July 18th, there were no registered speakers for this meeting, and therefore there is no public participation for today. This is the section where we allow members to come and where we allow individuals to come and express their views to the Audit and Finance Standing Committee. The date of the next meeting is August 16th, 2023. And with that, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. We stand adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope you have a great